Thank you. Okay, are there any amendments or anything to the agenda this evening?
Not that I'm aware, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So move. Second.
Okay, thank you. Announcements. The public participation policy applies to the selectmen meetings. A copy of it is in the back of each agenda posted in this meeting room and on our website. The Alton Town Tax Collector's Office will be closed Thursday, October 13th, 2022, to attend the 97th Annual Town Clerk's Office Conference. Roberts Cove Road Bridge Project is underway. Roberts Cove Road will be closed at the Roberts Cove Beach, number 135, Roberts Cove Road to 143, Roberts Cove Road. The closure is estimated to be for another week. At this time, we'll have to wait a couple of minutes for 6:05 for the public hearing. Because we got that too fast. Got 3 minutes. Okay. 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 Very good. Thank you. You still probably have to walk me through it a little bit. That's fine. This is actually a sheet I put together. Okay. And then just. No, that was L. Oh, L here. Okay. Sorry, I just do my. Yeah. This is after. Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you. 2 minutes. Yes.
That's the sign of the cemetery.
Mm-hmm. 1 minute. Okay. Thank you for your patience. It's now 6:05 and we will open the session to public hearing on highway building improvement and fire department building improvement capital reserve use to hire consultants for the town facility plans.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So at last meeting, we spoke about utilizing funds from both of those capital reserves to move things forward. That was prompted by a meeting I had with the facilities committee. The concern is that we're looking at land. We're under contract with a lot right now and not quite knowing exactly what the footprint and the necessary infrastructure is going to be for facilities to meet the current needs of highway, fire, any other of the departments that are running out of space. It was prudent to request that we possibly go out and hire either architects or a team of structural engineers, architect, civil engineer. It would probably be a group, usually trending, where it would be an architectural group, a civil engineering firm, and possibly a construction group or whatnot that puts the proposal or the plans together. And, we think at this point, it's the next step that we need to take in order to better assess where we go from here, money wise, and, future proposals possibly at town meeting.
Okay.
This would go out as a request for our quotes to
Yes.
several firms. Then.
Yes.
Public.
Anyone like to speak on that? Come on up. Have a seat, state your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Markland. As a resident of this town, I appreciate the Board of Selectmen considering this long overdue project of working on our buildings, especially the fire building in the highway department. Having had the experience of touring both facilities, they need work, a lot of work. And I think we've passed the buck long enough that we really need to focus in on those two buildings. I agree with your discussions all of them been having. Having served many years on a municipal facility planning committee, and it was torture. I will tell you that the plan that the town administrator just brought forward is hiring an architect is much needed for the starting process of this, where you're going forward. I've been listening to your discussions. You're doing a great job. And I think the facility planning committee definitely needs that architect support, as the town administrator said, to move forward with some solid plans. So I am hopeful the board will endorse project that going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your time.
Very much. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, Board, Kelly Sullivan. Just would like to reiterate Mr. Markland's statements. I would hope that you would endorse this going forward. It's very overdue in our fire building and our town depot. So too many Band-Aids. And the facilities committee, and I think everybody, I've toured the facilities myself. So long overdue, and I think bringing a team on board to help guide in the proper direction would be well worth it. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any other comments or questions? That'll be after.
Sir, can I ask a question? The study of these facilities.
Could you please come up and state your name, please?
I'm not used to.
That's all
I was
right.
a selectman in
Just come on
Marblehead
up.
for 20 years, so I can feel your pain. Sir, my name is William Woodfin. I live on Dan Kelly Drive. It's my first attendance at any municipal meeting, and it's nice to see a board of selectmen sitting around here. And I'm glad that you've continued with this, this manner of government. That being said, are these new facilities being planned for the same sites that they exist at now, or will this be a full municipal building in a different location, or we haven't really made that decision?
That decision is still being sought after.
Okay.
And so these plans will help make that decision
All right.
of a new location, if that's possible,
Mhm.
or to reuse the property at hand, but that's remains to be seen.
Yeah. The other thing I would encourage the board to consider when those plans come back is to make sure it's a green building, so that operating costs in the future won't, increase, especially as it relates to energy supply and things like that. That's all I have to say. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Anything else on the highway and fire department improvement plan? If not, we'll close at this time for that public hearing. And at this time, open to public input on anything on the agenda at this time.
See if I can shoot this in. In regards to budgets, I guess, kind of, since you have the budget listed as something you'll be discussing later on today, I want to discuss warrant articles with the nonprofits. I don't know if that's allowable, Mr. Chair, or do you have to wait till the end of the meeting?
I don't see why
It's
not.
part of
Only
the
'cause
budget,
budget
but it's
process.
part of the budget.
I'm
yeah.
trying to sneak it in so I don't have to stay to the whole meeting.
It's part of it, so.
Nonprofits, I think I spoke to you gentlemen earlier in the year, but now it's budget season. I know you got a busy season ahead of you. I would ask, because since I do work at the polls and I hear people's talking about the warrant articles and how long they are and how many pages they are, I would ask again that the board give some consideration in regards to the nonprofits. I know years ago we asked the town whether we be willing to combine the nonprofits, and that was overwhelmingly no. But in a general sense, the town has been supportive of roughly the 10 is it 10 or so nonprofit articles, which I think roughly came to $60,000 or $70,000. I think I averaged it out for the years. I would ask the board to consider putting it into your operating budget as a one-time item, asking the people if they'd be willing to do that. And at the Board of Selectmen meetings, you guys would have a public hearing on nonprofits, whether to allow the money to go out or not. But I would ask that you'd consider it as a line item into your budgets so that we, the people who normally have been very supportive of it, don't have to spend 2 hours in a booth supporting 10 articles when we already have all these capital reserve items that are listed in there too, which are much more important. I'd be happy with that. I believe a neighboring town does exactly that in their budget. And I believe you have a public works director who worked in that neighboring town, who may be familiar with how that town operated with the nonprofit organizations and how they dealt with it in that fashion through an escrow account or a revolving account. And the only reason I bring that up is because, like, if somebody were to want to donate anonymously to that account to help nonprofits in a general sense, that would be another option. I mean, it would just kind of open some doors up for support of that, and it would eliminate those 10 articles. I'm just trying to see what I can do to make the ballot shorter on the warrant articles, and I keep bringing that up every year, and I apologize, but
No, it's,
I think if the board considers it, I think your public works director may have some knowledge on how that works in a neighboring community.
thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else?
Kelly Sullivan again. So just a couple of things I noticed on the agenda. We have the Water Bandstand Committee looking for a historical marker. I signed the petition. I don't see why we couldn't get that to happen. It's obviously historical. It means a lot to our town. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Also Parks and Rec Commission. I know that they're looking to form a committee, Friends of Parks and Rec, something like that, to try to raise funds for fundraising and for grants to improve things around town, for instance, the playground at Jones Field and other items like that. To form the committee would help offset the tax base because they could fundraise on their own, and it wouldn't affect the budget. And we're looking for that to be put in escrow to be oversaw by the Parks and Rec Commission. And just looking to try to help out with some things around town. I think this committee is probably overdue. I don't think people realize how much help Parks and Rec actually needs from the community. So I would like to see this committee formed so we can try to do that. So thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Anybody else like to speak for anything on the agenda items? Okay, not seeing anyone, we'll close to public input at this time and go right to appointments. Mr. William Nims, Winter Road, Road. Hazlet Road, I mean, sorry.
My name is Bill Nims. I live on 14 Hazlet Road. This was brought about because the Highway Department wrote a notice, sent us a notice that they were planning to terminate all winter maintenance on any private road in the town. So I just wanted to go back and give a very brief history as to where we've come and some of the things that have happened. This started in 1999 when my father-in-law, Ed Hazlet, hence the name of the road, wanted to have the town plow the road. This road is only a few hundred feet long. It's at the end of the public part of Sunset Shore Road, where Sunset Shore Road ends and Hazlet Road goes a few hundred feet to the left, and Sunset Shore Road continues, but it's a private road from there till it gets back public a little further down. So when the plow comes around, he comes to an end of the public road and there's two private roads there. And right now, you had been plowing the Hazlet Road. And he worked with Ken Roberts in the Highway Department to get the road to the town spec that he wanted. And he had to put in a turnaround at the end of this short road so that the plow could go to the end and turn around and swing around and come right back out. So that was done and it's been working fine since 1999. There's been additional maintenance required, but there's very little maintenance on this road because it just supports 3 houses. So it's only that. The biggest problem we've had in maintenance is more drainage and trying to solve the drainage problems. Back in 2019, I think it was, there was a notice sent out that the private roads had to be brought up to spec. And Ken Roberts came out and I talked with him on what all his requirements were to get the road up to spec. So we completed those, but unfortunately, when we completed it was a week late, but that had been communicated. And you ended up deciding that since it hadn't been completed on time, that you were terminating the plowing. And I came back and appealed and discussed it. And you said you'd send selectmen out to look at it. And actually, Ken Roberts was not available, but the plow driver that does that road went out with the selectmen. And he did see that everything had been done properly. And the plow driver asked for a couple of more things to be done on top of what had been done. He wanted some trees taken down in the turnaround at the end, which we did. And there's a culvert that water runs under the road down towards the lake. And it sort of jutted out in the road a little bit, and the plow driver didn't like that. So we built it back another 5 feet. So the road it was straight. And so everybody saw that work had been done. So everything was set and you plowed again. The cost of all that was probably about $10,000. There was some major changes you wanted, a lot of material brought in, crown the road, gullies, what have you, plus the additional work the plow driver wanted. The understanding was that if we did this work, that you would continue to plow the road. So with little traffic on the road, over the years, it's been improved to the point that in the last 3 years since we've done that, it's basically in the same condition it was 3 years ago. So we think we're really have solved all the drainage problems. And there's as I say, very little maintenance. The road coming down Sunset Shore Road, that requires maintenance several times during the year because of potholes and stuff like that, and a redistribution of the gravel and everything on the road. The plower, in talking with him, he even said that it was easier for him to come down Sunset Shore Road and plow our road come down and turn around and go right back up and out again, that it's easier than trying to come to a dead end with two private roads there and push the snow and back up and turn around. It takes 2 minutes. He takes one pass down, comes and swings around and takes another pass and comes right back up and is out. And it probably would be something that you actually could take advantage of, that turnaround and storing temporary equipment or what have you when you're maintaining the road. I know you have to, the equipment's back and forth for a few days, sometimes on that maintenance. If the town took over that few hundred feet of road, that just continuation, you'd have that turnaround, you'd have that extra storage space for on it. But I just threw that out as something that it might be easier if you had control of that than we had control of that, because it's relatively maintenance free.
Thank you. We have unfortunately 3 minutes per person, so, but we appreciate.
No,
your-
we give them 10 for appointment.
10, okay,
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's just public
Yeah.
input.
Okay, right. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim Rochella, Winter Roads, Dan Kelly Drive.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Jim Rochelle. I live at 82 Dan Kelly. You probably read my letter back in August. I left the most important thing out on purpose, hoping to get this hearing tonight. First of all, the part of the road that town plows has never been maintained by the town. Spring, summer, fall, rain, those potholes, everything are taken care of by the residents of the street. The plowing has occurred all the way up to what was the Bevins property. I believe it's lot 48, map 35. And a turnaround was provided for the plow right at that spot. Now, going down Annie's Way, and the rest of the road has always been maintained by the homeowners. My concern with what you're doing right now is at the end of Dan Kelly Drive, the plows are natural turnaround area. You're going to start piling snow into Dan Kelly Drive and leaving it there from either direction, coming up the hill and just sweeping to the right or coming down Sanctuary and hitting it. In an emergency, there's no way for any fire, police, anybody to get in there, emergency equipment. At least today, or up until now, it's been plowed up until that point where the town, we maintain it and the people on Annie's Way maintain their section. I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel very uncomfortable that people won't be able to get up to some of those homes. There's 7 or 8 houses on Dan Kelly and a number of other ones down below. If the storms are such as they have been in the past and that pile gets at the end of the street gets too large, no piece of equipment's going to get in there from the fire department or anywhere. If it's maintained the way it is, even if it's got 15 inches, 16 inches of snow before the town gets there, somebody with a 4x either living there or one of the emergency service vehicles can get in. But in the future, I don't see that happening. And I don't know where they're going to put the snow, except on that part of Dan Kelly at the very beginning of the road. Now, you know the area I'm talking about, right at the top of the hill there where the old, I guess we had a turnaround at one time with flower garden right there. But that's a big concern. It's not going to be safe any longer, sir, gentlemen. So I'm hoping you'll reconsider that. The only thing the town has been doing is plowing it. They come down, they get the turnaround provided, they go back down, sweep it out, and they're done. They have not been putting gravel in it in the spring. They have never scraped it to my knowledge. They haven't had a need to. So it's just the plowing in the wintertime and the emergency service that I'd like you to reconsider that on and see what happens. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, new business, Water Bandstand Committee, historical marker endorsement.
I'd like to make one correction. We're not the Water Bandstand Committee. We're the Water Bandstand State Highway Marker Committee.
And state your name for the record.
Nancy Merrill.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Michelle Bemis.
Hi, I'm Denise Julio. Hi, Denise Pulio, 840 Suncook Valley Road.
My name's John Benton.
Well, I'm going to turn things over to Denise. She has had more experience with the state markers, so I'll let her explain what we'd like to do.
Thank you. So we're here today to petition the town of Alton to put a new historical marker highlighting the bandstand, the water bandstand. I'm going to read that, the proposed marker statement to you now. The header would state, the Alton Bay Water Bandstand. In the mid-1920s, 6 men from Alton Bay formed a racing association with the idea of racing boats on Lake Winnipesaukee at Alton Bay. The bandstand was built to be used for band concerts and the judging stand for races. Mr. Oliver Barnes, member of the racing committee, and volunteers completed the structure in 1928. Funds were raised through whist card parties and donations totaling $1,050.26 and $500 from the town of Alton. This is the only water bandstand in New Hampshire. Racing Association members were Edward Downing, Lester Downing, Harry Jones, Martin Lynch, Stephen Lynch, and Ralph Stevens. So this marker would be put on.
It's across the street from Bob's. We have a picture there, and it has the GPS mark coordinates where it's the proposed spot for it.
Okay.
It, if you can envision it, but there's a small garden area there across the street. It's kind of right in front of there.
Right in front of that.
Yeah. Like the 2 photographs are just a post we drove in the ground. There's a bucket on it, so you can kind of see. You wouldn't really see the post.
This would be the regular state sign.
The green
that you would have,
marker.
Green marker.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I did receive an email from Amy Dixon, who is the head of the Historical Marker Committee, saying that they're not accepting new marker orders until summer of next year, 2023. We were hoping to get this marker approved, believe it or not, Halloween, October 31st. But because of the delay in the marker order, we're going to put it on the agenda for January with the state to review this and approve it. But with that being said, we need to have a letter from the town of Alton approving the marker, the terminology, and the location. Once the marker is installed, legally, it is the responsibility of the town of Alton to maintain this marker. With that being said, typically, the most that would ever come to it would be touching up the letters on the face of it. And with today's paint pens, you could pretty much do that on your own. But with that, I want to make sure that the town is aware of this responsibility. There is a requirement of a petition to be signed with 20 signatures, and we have well over.
I have about 120 signatures.
Pretty good.
So
Again, all we needed was 20, but I wanted to make sure that not only the selectmen, but the state would recognize that we have a lot of support for this.
As far as funding the marker, there are 2 ways we can go about this. We can either take up donations within the town, or there are state funds available where the state can fund the marker once it's approved. So it would be up to us on what we decide to do on that manner. If we self-fund, the odds of having the marker produced faster are there. It would alleviate a lot of delay. But once the sign is produced, the state would install the marker on their own with no cost to anyone involved. And then that would be that. It would be up to us at that point. As far as the history, I will have to rely on my partners here to give more of the, I mean, we really tried to encompass all the history. We listed the names in alphabetical order, so there was no preference given to the membership. We really tried to keep it simple. I did bring a copy of the petition. I apologize, I only brought 1 copy, but I will leave it here just so you have it on record.
They all have it. They all have it in their books.
Okay.
Yep.
So just so you had it on records, you know, so what we have done. And I think that's about everything.
Very good.
I guess my question is, do you have any questions?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. As long as you have everything, all the information that's on for the sign and the names and locations and everything all correct,
Mhm.
and to your satisfaction as a committee.
It was very important that we could see the bandstand from the sign and that the sign was also, readable from the road. So, we were trying to hit all the notches, hit all the points.
Is there a fixed cost associated with it?
So I actually have an email that I sent to Amy requesting the cost of the sign, which is why I got the long response of, well, the state can pay for it, but you can do that. And she gave me the name of the sign company. It's in my bag if you want me to grab it. But it's like $2,500 thereabouts, probably a little bit less than that. But that's kind of a ballpark figure.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I support it wholeheartedly.
Yeah,
sounds.
we
Hey,
need
can
a
you-
vote on this?
Yes.
And, okay.
Yes, because you need a formal letter, right?
Yes,
Correct.
Formal
yes.
letter.
So.
I will
if the
need a
board
formal
ma-
letter
if the
signed by the
board
town.
Votes in the affirmative.
I
we'll
think
have
it's a
letter
great
drafted.
idea and I fully support it.
Thank you.
And I like to, a motion to approve the Water Bandstand State Historical Marker Committee to give them the approval or going to the state and applying.
So moved. I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And just to give a little plug to our committee, we did start a Facebook page called the Alton Historical Marker page. So we're kind of hoping that we'll get community input on where else we should be focused on highlighting local knowledge and history. So I don't want this to be a one and done. I think Alton has a lot to offer, and I think we're being missed on the tourist trail. So I would really like to, help the town focus on bringing a little more equity into the community.
Thank you very much.
Can I keep these for the file?
I don't even have a
Yes.
copy of those
Well,
yet.
I'll wait till they're, I'll wait till they're done.
Are you sure? You sorry, we can hang on? Okay.
Thank you. Have a good evening, Nancy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just to go back to the appointments that we had, I'd like to take a week, bring this up on our next agenda. I'd like myself personally go back out and revisit these roads.
Okay.
I have experience in plowing. I'm not the public works director, or the highway department, but I've plowed over most of my years being in business. And as stated, and I remember the conversation from the truck driver said it did make his life easier going out there, turning around. So I'd like to go out and revisit those, have it brought back up on the agenda so we can discuss a little more. Maybe the rest of us can go out and take a look at those, because
I agree.
years ago, when winter maintenance started, I was one of the first ones that agreed with it, and we were doing Mount Major Park. And the reason we took it on was the town was getting stuck out there. So they were going through the private park to Mount Major Park, going to Woodlands, Rogers Way, and we were lifting the plow. The residents got upset because we were packing the snow down and we weren't doing anything. So to save us $300, we agreed to plow that section. State law allowed us to do that. Since then, the town's taken on quite a few private roads over those years, since the 90s. But I remember the conversation with Mr. Roberts. I remember going back and we agreed. They brought it up to certain specs. Yes, we would still maintain it. Come 3 years later, all of a sudden they've done all this work. Now we're saying, no, we don't want to do it. So I think maybe I was hasty in voting for it, but I'd like to go out and revisit some of those roads that are coming forward.
Yes, and I thought that was what we'd do after the testimony tonight. We would reconsider it.
Yes, and I agree. I think it's a good idea to go back out and look. I was actually one of the selectmen that looked at one of the roads at the time, 3 years ago. So I'd like to take a look at it again myself.
Yeah, I agree.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So our next meeting, just so you know, because we're on an off week this week, is next Monday. So you okay with putting it right back on the agenda next Monday?
Next Monday.
It'll give you but
Enough
only a
time?
week.
Is that enough?
Something to do on Tuesday night.
Okay, all right, just check, just making sure you're aware of the date.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay,
Excuse me, could we, for the next meeting, could we have a list of all the roads again? I don't know if
Yep, I believe I have that list that was produced the last time with the, so
thank you.
I can actually, if you want, I'll email it out to, I'll have Stacy email it out to all the board members, so you have it to reference if you're gonna go look at roads.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission request.
So,
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Ken Roberts. I am on the Parks and Recreation Commission. I got voted in to come up and talk to you all tonight. So it's good to see you all again.
See you.
so if you want, Mr. Chairman, if you may, if I may, I'm just gonna preface this a little bit as to why we're here tonight and what the representation is. So I was approached by some members of the public who are volunteering possibly for this committee. The concern is that the Parks and Rec Commission wants to, they want to form a committee. They have a lot of volunteers that are willing to join this committee for the betterment of, Parks and Rec features like playgrounds, courts, different stuff for the town. The concern is how would this committee, if they raised funding for this, how were they going to go about as far as retaining those funds and what type of account and how to expend those funds. And the concern came up is that originally the Parks and Rec Commission was going to have a volunteer committee try to establish 501(c), like a nonprofit. And that's very, for anybody who's been involved in it, it's establishing that kind of nonprofit through through the state, and then having to do all of your reporting to the IRS and everything every year. It's very encumbersome for somebody who's volunteering their time to do something like that. So during the conversations, I had mentioned that, like for instance, with the railroad park, we had people doing that, or the senior center. The Board of Selectmen has the ability to authorize an escrow account, and an escrow account for a specific purpose, where if funds are raised, they can be taken in and housed in the escrow fund, and then expended through the Board of Selectmen for anything that is directly related to that fund's purpose. So it's a little bit different as an escrow fund. I did speak with the finance manager, and she in turn had spoken with the treasurer as well about these funds. And we have a few of these accounts that are existing and set up. We do. So that seems to be a more reasonable way for a committee who's volunteering their time to raise funds for the town, or solicit donations, to be able to house those funds. And then we have the governing body controlling how those funds are being dispersed. So formal presentations are being made on what the money is going to be used for, and it's all documented through the minutes and everything else. So that's really how this started, just to preface things.
Yeah, that's suggest. I went to the Department of Justice, and I actually went to the Attorney General's office and talked to them about this and how to form this. And as the town administrator was saying, it became like it was pretty overwhelming for such a small town for individuals to get involved with this. This is like a full-time job. You deal with the IRS, you deal with everything else. So the second thought of the commission is to create just a committee underneath this to go and look at facilities. And actually, I volunteered to be part of the committee to go look at the facilities and see what things need to be done and why the fundraising would kick off. Example, the park at Jones's Field. We know that, I'm just going to throw out a number. We know that thing's probably $80,000 to upgrade. I'm not saying we're going to raise $80,000, but anything that offsets taxes through, volunteer funds or donations or other ways. And we've already gained a lot of interest, and to be able to look at grants, be able to put grants together for this type of thing. We think it's a great place. And if knowing that the selectmen that we're going to form this committee, as well as create an escrow account that we have a place to put grants or anything in for this purpose. And the purposes would be coming up by the committee.
and coming back to the Parks and Rec Commission where we can start putting things together and have an idea of where the funds are going to go. So when the Parks and Rec Director comes up and, and I'm not sure, it'd probably be the Public Works Director comes up and requests money for something, hopefully it could be offset by part of the escrow account. Hopefully this thing kicks off. There was a lot of interest in part of the committee to being part of it. And like I said, I told him I'd be happy to be part of it as well. And I think it's just a great thing to offset taxes with, just like they did, for example, with the Senior Citizen Center or with the park down back. I guess we need just approval, consensus, a vote.
Just approval from the board to establish the escrow account. I think I'd err on the side of caution and take a vote on it.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do. You're stating committee. Is that a committee that will have to be sworn in? Is they work underneath the auspice of the Parks and Rec Commission?
I don't know if they have to be
Parks and Rec
sworn
Commission,
in.
who was appointed by the Board of Selectmen now,
Mhm.
requesting to establish a committee underneath the Parks and Rec Commission, which then becomes a part of a Town of Alton committee, if they're working in behalf of the Town of Alton, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works with the subcommittee because it's just more of an advisory role.
And I understand, but this is
Yeah.
what I wonder if we need to find out from how we need to set it up.
I can do a little more homework on that and make sure that it's in the correct manner as far as the swearing in or not swearing in of the
Because
subcommittee.
you're gonna have volunteers going down, looking at facilities. The town does have a liability there because they are working on or participating on the behalf of the Parks and Rec Commission. So there is some form of liability for the town of Alton there. That's all I'm wondering, just so
No,
that they're
I
covered at
understand
that point.
completely. Yeah. No, I don't have I don't know
I know you
100% right
wouldn't
now.
have the
So
answer.
I'll research that a little bit more just to make sure, that's established in the appropriate manner for the appropriate protections.
Isn't this still under the same category as like the escrow account for the Water Bandstand Committee?
No, that's not that.
Where you have a committee formed with an escrow account that has to be approved for any funds expended by the selectmen. It's basically the same thing.
No, that one was, that's not an escrow account. It's a CRF.
There's two. There's two accounts.
Okay.
There is an escrow account.
Okay, well, the other one, you're right anyways. The
Same
escrow,
thing.
it is the same thing because the escrow accounts are established under the board and the board in turn ends up having to be the agents to expend as well.
Right.
But yeah, you're right.
So this is already,
And
it's already in essence being done.
Well, no, what he's talking about is for the actual committee members themselves. Are we going to swear them in as a formal committee so that the protections of our liability? Or if it's just a appointment where the Parks and Rec can appoint them?
The Water Bandstand Committee were all appointed
Appointed by the board.
by the board.
if I may, Mr. Chairman, was the thing at the park down back, was that committee?
I don't know. That was before I was the selectman again, so I
And
can't
then the
tell
other
you
thing
that.
was the senior citizens. I don't remember them being part of a committee. Matter of fact, I don't remember them coming to the Board of Selectmen to expend any of the
The
funds.
Alton Senior Center, when that was being done, Stanley and Linda was a part of that back in 1990. They were doing it as part of the Alton Seniors Group. They had established their own escrow account, putting money into the building. And then the town took it over at that point and they started a revolving fund.
Mhm.
That part I remember. As far
Yeah, I
as
don't-
depot, I don't. All I'm saying is though, if we're gonna have folks down there, should we appoint them through the Parks and Rec Commission? Just so they're protected too,
So they're protected.
in case they get.
Yeah, I mean,
And that's your
volunteers are
whole point.
protected under the auspice anyway.
Well,
volunteers.
yes and no, but if they're doing something for a commission, which is appointed by the Board of Selectmen, the only ones that have the authority to appoint are the Board of Selectmen. So they should be appointed as a subcommittee of the Rec Commission, I believe, but Ryan should look into that for us.
Mhm.
I'm for it, don't get me wrong, but I also want them to be protected.
Yes, I agree.
I just want to know if it's extremely similar to some of the committees and escrow accounts and that work that we do on other projects or other buildings. It's the same thing. So I think it's fallen under the same category. But it doesn't hurt to do a little more research on that.
So Doesn't make which difference we go. Can we get a okay on the escrow account? Because I know there's some people that would like to donate to this.
Meaning if you do approval for the escrow account with the, I mean, you're welcome to put the condition or the follow-up as to finding out exactly whether or not the committee should be appointed or if they need to be sworn in.
And who are agents to expend, the committee, the commission, or the board of selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen would
Board of
be
Selectmen.
if you establish the escrow account.
I just want to make
Yeah,
sure where it lays because the question has come up before.
Yeah.
Yes, it has.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to allow the Parks and Rec Commission to establish an escrow account for the purpose of raising funds for the grounds and buildings of the parks. I think that's what Mr. Roberts was here asking for today. It wasn't so much for programs. It was mostly for buildings and grounds of the parks.
Upgrading facilities for recreation.
Upgrading the facilities and land of the parks.
I would just add, I would edit that a little bit to not allow the Parks and Rec to establish escrow. We have to do it. It's the town.
That's Board of Selectmen establish the escrow for the parks, for the grounds and facilities upkeep, upgrade.
We have a second.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you. Okay. IT department, tax software recommendations.
Good evening. We're looking for your support in the upgrade of our tax department software.
Mr. Chairman, I've read through it, so I have some questions for Josh before he gets to explain it, because I think most of it is all self-explanatory. Is this for this year or next year, Josh?
This year.
All right. Is there a reason we want to get into it this year and not wait till next year because of budgets? This wasn't planned for this year in the budget. That's why I'm asking. And this is twice now you've come before us to purchase software within the budget term that wasn't planned for last year. That's why I was wondering.
Right. Yeah. So the $13,033.72. It was in the plan to get your approval to spend out of capital reserve in order to get this project started so that we can get prepared for next year.
Okay, out of your capital reserve?
Correct.
Okay, so I remember going the last 2 years with you to town meeting. We've asked to start this capital reserve, which says to build it up and try to get it there, but it seems we're spending as fast as we're putting it in. My only problem is with Avatar. I still hate their system for a resident to look up assessing. I still don't think they've done us justice compared to what we used to have. Okay. So I'm just worried if we go into this now, are we going to have problems sending out the tax bills here in November 1st of December?
The plan that they provided us in the implementation seemed pretty solid, so I don't suspect there would be any issue with that.
Can I ask how much is left in your capital reserve for this year?
I haven't actually touched it at all, aside from the last thing that I asked to do. So I believe it's still in the.
Oh, that's right. You did have that number.
Right here, isn't it? It should
It's
be.
38,
What was it again?
but he'll give you the exact amount.
43,601.21.
That was after what we just put out
Yeah, 601, I see it.
for the clouds and everything.
As far as I know, Laura, when she put this into the book last week, this was current to date.
And is this a yearly fee or is this for all for installation and just a one-time?
That's a flat installation, get it in house, and the annual support and licensing is $17.55.
Okay.
And the only other problem I have with computer companies, the one having a business and doing upgrades or even changing software companies, which one of our banks in town just did that. And it was, they thought they had everything covered and they didn't have everything covered. Do they have everything covered? Are we gonna have hiccups come tax bill time?
Innerwear Development, same thing as Avatar. They've been around for years. They're the same company that handles our motor vehicle system. They're a pretty solid company. I really don't suspect there'd be any issues with the implementation.
Okay. It's just, I know we got tax bills coming out at the end of the month, if not in the middle of November.
Yeah, these people know exactly how important that is, and they wouldn't leave us.
Well, I understand that, but there's still computer companies.
True.
Okay?
And I'm not going to argue that.
I've dealt with
Make
quite a few over
mistakes.
20 years. You have more experience in this, and I will firsthand acknowledge you on that. But every computer company I've ever dealt with, you lay out the whole program to them, and when they show up, they, oh yeah, we forgot to do this for you.
Right.
That's all I'm saying.
If you'd like, I can get a solid project roadmap and provide it to you. If it would help you feel more comfortable.
And I saw the recommendations from the other towns. Don't get me wrong. I had same recommendations from other stores.
Right.
So I've not been happy with their assessing program. It's worse than what we had before. At least last time you could put in Jesus Valley Realty or Jesus Valley Road, everything popped up on Jesus Valley Road. You go to our system now for assessing, it says look like by address. You pop up address, you get every road in town alphabetical. You still got to go all the way down to the J's to get to Jesus Valley Realty. It's not like what we used to have. It seemed like we went backwards instead of forwards. That's all. And I know you weren't part of the Avatar on assessing, I don't believe. So if this is the way you feel we need to go, I'll back you.
Myself, Jen, we both believe it's the right thing to do.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Basically, that's the recommendations.
Yeah.
We're hiring them for.
I entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to allow Josh to enter an agreement with Interware Development, Software Development, for $13,033.72 to be taken out of the capital reserve fund of IT department.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And
Thank-
Mr. Chairman, well, you already said aye. Also along with that motion, allow Mr. Heath to sign on our behalf. There's only one line there if I'm looking at this, right? Correct?
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a second to that?
Do we have a second?
Yep.
I'll vote.
And a vote.
All in favor?
Sorry. Aye.
Thank you. Okay, budget presentations. And that would be with Parks and Recreation.
Start with Parks and Rec.
Yep.
Hello, good evening.
How are you?
How are you?
So, Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure how the board would like to proceed with these budgets. Do we want to highlight certain line items that have increases, or do you want to go line by line and go right through the whole thing?
I think generally, we go through and we look through the lines. If any selectmen have a question on any particular line, they ask.
Mhm.
And we kind of just go through it. So if you want to start us off, Kelly, with anything that you'd like to add, or if anyone has any questions.
Usually the department head or the town administrator gives a rough overview of the budget for the upcoming year.
Sure.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So just to highlight some of the items that have increased or decreased, the benefit buyout has decreased. I can tell you by how much, if you like that information, $804. Travel and mileage has increased by $24. Office supplies has decreased by $11. Postage has decreased by $16. And printing has decreased by $100. And that's not including the wages. Also, the part-time wages have decreased $4,129. And that's a point of discussion for tonight. It was my recommendation to remove the summer office clerk position. And also because the lifeguard wages ranged $11.34 and $11.61 to increase that to $17 for 2023, and to remove one lifeguard position at 32 hours, and to make the remaining 2 lifeguard positions 32 hours instead of 40 hours. So with those changes, those recommendations, that decreased that part-time line item 4,129. But I guess the question is, do the selectmen want to continue having lifeguards? We haven't had lifeguards the last 3 years because of COVID. And this year we didn't have any applications.
No applications.
The wages were in the $11 range. And it's a lot of competition, and it's an investment for that employee to pay to be trained. So they have to be trained, and they have to take a class, drive to a pool place that has a pool. So it's effort to get that certification. It's a lot of responsibility for that individual. So I just wanted to bring it forward to the town to make that decision. If you want to budget for lifeguards, or if you want to try this approach to offer more money and to have less coverage. Currently, there's signs at the public swim areas that say no lifeguard on duty. So there is signage indicating that, and there haven't been any specific incidents in the last 3 years, but lifeguards do provide consistent rules, and they are an extra layer of safety, but it isn't necessarily the town's responsibility to watch people swimming. So that's people's choice to go swimming, and there is posted signs. So
I think you should stay at least try to stay at least, but every town had problems getting lifeguards. Belmont didn't have one at their beach most of the time. One is money. I had no problem with the 17 because you're asking a lifeguard to get mouth to mouth just in case someone drowns. You got fire department personnel that are trained down here getting 17. So I know most of them are students normally going into college and stuff. I still think it's something we should offer. Especially at times, especially with the way the public is getting at times now, especially for enforcement of rules, because the police department's not always around. I have no problem with that, but if you want to cut back one or the 2 and then make the 2 even on the 32 hours, that I would have no problem with that.
okay,
But I have no problem with you going to $17 an hour for them either.
okay.
I mean, because if you hire a babysitter today, you're paying close to $30 an hour. And lifeguard is a babysitter.
Right, so this recommendation removes the one part-time lifeguard. There was a part-time lifeguard that covered on days off. So we had covered 7 days a week, so that we wouldn't have covered 7 days a week, but we don't have any coverage now. So I thought this would be an improvement. We can give that a try.
Well, I have to agree. I think it is an improvement, and I think it's a way to go. I think it is important that we do have someone there, in my opinion. I've noticed an increase of quite a few people.
Yes.
On the beach. It seems like it's getting more and more populated, more people there, more people scattered and swimming out beyond the markers and going out into the channel. I've seen more of that, and unfortunately, no one's been hurt. So I think it's important that somebody does keep an eye on
Okay.
at part-time, and I think
Jumping off the
I
tower.
used to be one of them to swim to the bandstand.
No, people jumping off the
Well, right.
stuff like
Right.
that. I agree with trying to go up to price of 17 something and try to have somebody there.
I think so.
I've had a lot of comments from residents this year about how come we don't have the lifeguards there anymore? And of course, we've had
Same
a
here.
problem hiring them. I know that.
Same here.
I think it's something we should continue. And especially the signage right down at Town Beach stating there is lifeguards, basically.
Right.
You know, you either take that sign down or put some lifeguards there. Yep. I support it.
I do too.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the operating budget of Recreation Department at 129,408.
Have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, Gilman Museum.
All right. There.
Mr. Chairman, in the future on the budget sheets, if we could, like we've had in the past, can we have another column added of what has been expended so far this year?
Expenditures, current expenditures.
Because right now we don't have no idea what's being current expenditures unless we have our monthly sheet with us, which I forget to bring my time, but normally we always had that when the budget was submitted. Okay, if we could have that.
See, what I'll do is get a printout for the table every day, because it's
It
changing
changes,
so
no,
much. So
no, that's fine. It just, it gives us some idea and then we can estimate it for the rest of the 3 months or whatever it is, but it just helps us go along.
okay, thank you. So on the Gilman Museum, it's level funded for this year. I went through, this was one of the budgets that I did, and going through, we were right on target percentage wise. And again, this kind of really lends itself to what Ruben was saying for you folks to be able to see those numbers. But even with, we looked at, as recent as this morning, I got another electricity bill for the Gilman Museum, and our increase seen on that was less than $2 in usage. And it's because it's based on usage, and we're averaging 63 kilowatts a month. So, yeah. So the museum isn't burning a lot of electricity or anything else. Same thing with fuel bills. I've gotten a recent fill, and even though fuel costs have gone up, we really, we set the temperature, so that it's appropriate at the times, but it's not running real high because it's not occupied on a regular basis. So.
Any other questions?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I move we accept the Gilman Museum budget at $8,087.
Second? I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving along to streetlights.
Mr. Chairman, again, this is one of the budgets that I did in going through, looking at the numbers where we're at. Each individual streetlight, the usage is, combined, everything is elevated, but based on our billing and percentages, we're confident that that 33.5 will carry us through this year too, this coming year, without having to put an increase in there.
Chairman, I move we accept the streetlight budget at $33,500 as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, patriotic purposes.
So there is an increase in this budget this year. If you remember last year, and attempts to offset the budget a little bit, we had paid for the fireworks displays out of the surplus. So what we did this year is we put half of the cost of the fireworks in for 23's contracts. The intent to pay the other half through. So basically, we're trying to ease that money back into the operating budget, because if we put it all in, 23's contract with Atlas are upwards of $20,000 all at once going back into that budget. We do have enough in other areas to be able to pay half that contract upfront, and then budget for only the second half of the contract this year, which is just sort of a 2-year stage of incorporating that money back into the budget.
Any questions?
No, it's the only place that I know that taxpayers can blow up that much money and not have a qualm about it.
Yeah.
20 minutes, half an hour.
Yeah.
They all look forward to it, believe me.
Chair, make a motion to approve the patriotic services budget of $13,940.
Second.
2023.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and emergency management.
So the emergency management budget went through, it's level funded again this year. We're down at, we're $11,003. Basically, I kept $10,000 in the preparation and response line. Just because we're not completely out of the woods with COVID. So we need to have some sort of money in there. When COVID was in its midst, we had put a big warrant article together to incorporate some money. But right now, the only monies we have to tap into it if we have an issue is emergency management's budget. So I just thought it was prudent to keep the 10,000 in there and level fund it so that we had something to fall back on if we have to start buying more PPE and masks and things of that nature.
They could be used for water to the public if they needed it.
Yes.
See stuff like that.
Anything like that. Yeah, that's,
I just wanted to make
yeah,
sure.
preparation in response to any
Okay.
natural disaster or emergency or anything. So.
The only thing, I have no problem with that. The only thing is I'd like to go back, have this brought up on the selectmen's agenda though sometime. So we can talk about the emergency management team.
I was just gonna say.
Okay.
Because we had talked, the selectmen had talked about that before. As when COVID happened, the selectmen were brought in as like an ex officio. We were part of the team, but we weren't part of the team. And I think that's, the Board of Selectmen had talked about in the past that possibly next time, if this ever happens again, that the actual selectman or two selectmen be a part of that team, make that official. Because it was just basically based on yourself, because you're the emergency management director. You're a lieutenant, I think, at the time, or captain.
Yeah. Well, Chief
officer.
McDougal and the fire chief are the two deputy EMDs.
Yeah, and then you had John as the health officer and town administrator.
Right.
You were the team. And the selectmen kept meeting up enough. We finally got invited in that, which gracefully you took us, and it all worked smoothly. We just feel that, at that time, maybe one or two selectmen need to be in that as part of that whole team.
We got asked a lot of questions and we weren't able to answer everything up to date. But one of the questions I had to ask to clarify, and that you're bringing up, and it is that the emergency management team, is it basically on hold right now, or is it organized enough if something came up tomorrow, it would be organized?
Well, the team is fine. So just to clarify, just for that, this was a unique situation, obviously COVID. Usually when an emergency, every incident I've handled in the last 13, 14 years doing this has been, sort of a lack of a better term, one and done, like a micro burst down 28 or, a couple of the other big storms we had. The longest evolution we ever had coming up to COVID was we had that ice storm, and that was like 5 or 7 days for some people without power. And we did some shelter evolutions during that. So the forming of an emergency management team for a long-term incident, it was new to that. And that team was actually formed under the guise of the selectmen. So as far as any of that goes in the future, if this were to happen, those team members, the only ones that are standing and given are the appointed director and my two deputies. So every evolution, we are appointed because we don't have time to go back to a meeting and set up a team.
And that's fine.
But in the future, any team is going to come under the direction of the board. So there shouldn't be any confusion of any board member, either 1, 2, whoever wants to be a member of that team, to liaise for the rest of the board members would be perfectly fine. And actually probably a welcome addition, because obviously we need the board support, especially when we're pulling funding from other areas, or if we have to pull emergency funding from the fund balance.
Don't get me wrong, it went smoothly.
Yeah.
Everything worked good. You couldn't ask for anything to work any better than what it did in this town, as far as I'm concerned. It's just that was brought up by the board last year, and I just thought I would bring it up again, and it just hasn't had that opportunity. So, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Who is the actual chair of the emergency?
That would be me.
Team. That would be the town administrator.
Because not because I'm the town administrator, but because I'm the appointed emergency management director.
The police chief, when Ryan was put in, they voted him in as the emergency director at that point, and which he's carried on since then.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then second in charge would be The
Well,
fire chief?
equally, the police chief and the fire chief
Fire
are
chief.
both for
That's right.
years. Well, since the fire chief had been hired, when he came on, he assumed that role because Ryan Ridley was in that role.
Right.
And then before that, I think it was, I'm sorry, Scott Williams was in that role, I believe. And then Todd has always been in that role since I've been police chief, as the deputy.
Okay. Yes.
So they, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Nope.
Motion?
I move we accept the emergency manager budget at $11,003.
Second?
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Tried to ease into the budgets this year.
Well, appreciate it. Thank you very much. Okay, is there any old business? It doesn't look like there's much.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I'd like to ask a question on each old businesses for just the budgets. Do we have any idea when we're going to have appointments or meeting nights for budgets? We're coming into October.
Right.
In years past, we've usually had half the budget done by September. So I'm just, and also looking at the budget book, it looks pretty skinny.
No, we're only down a couple of budgets. They may not all be in here right now, but
I know the justification sheets are much thinner than they have been in the.
you're right. They're running a tally instead of one justification on each page.
Blow up the pages a little.
Can we blow them up?
Well, I mean, I could show you one in here. It's hard to read, even with over a 25-year-old. Because I said, is it my eyes or is it your eyes today at work? They said, no, I'd have a hard time reading it. Seemed like maybe the
Font was
a little bit small, you know.
What
but
budget was it? I'm just out of curiosity.
I'd have to go back now and look because I was going through them all today and says, the justification sheets just don't look the same anymore. And I think actually, where was it? Public Works, wasn't it?
Yes, I will.
No, it wasn't the green because we didn't have the Public Works sheet, but it was one of them. There was one that I had to turn the page and look at it. I'm going, so I went and even got the magnifying glass. That didn't even help. Okay. It's just that you probably should have changed the toner if you have one in your printer. Maybe it was getting a little weak at that point.
I didn't print them. So.
I know, I'm just saying, like, it's even here with this light here. I can read it good there.
There you
go. But I'll find it for you, Ryan. And just
Okay.
go through
Yeah,
it.
I'll have to. I have a feeling that was a specific
reason for that.
No, there was a specific. It was a specific budget. There, most of the standardized sheets are all like the forms you were looking at tonight.
All right. Oh, I can tell you one right now, actually. It was this one. I just went to it. It's underneath the Public Works. And if I look at all the current, if I look at all the current, it's just, if there's no spacing, it's just crammed right up tight.
Was that a spreadsheet?
That was on.
He's on his own program anyways. I'm trying to.
Public Works, 4312. Scott's got it, so we got to turn the book upside down and sideways at the same time. Just kidding, Scott. But I mean, this right here, it's crammed together a little bit. I mean, the town's not that hard up. We can't afford a little extra paper.
Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. So to answer your question about the budget is we're gonna move forward full speed with the board on budgets. The issue was we were gonna try that attempt. Well, I'm not gonna try anymore, unfortunately, because we're getting late in the season. That one attempt, we couldn't get a quorum. We need to move forward. So I'm not gonna, it was worth a shot, and it didn't work out having the combined meetings.
It would have worked well.
Yeah, no, it would have, and that was really the intent behind everything. But but I have collectively met with all of the department heads now at this point. There was a couple of budgets that we were trying to just finalize that haven't been in here. One in particular was the fire department, because they came to you with that proposal ahead of time. The police department had a similar, they were going back and forth with a couple of lines in their budget. We're actually meeting tomorrow, but we spoke today and finalized things. But we have another meeting tomorrow just to be on the same page moving forward. And but other than that, they're all in. It's just but to have these books ready for the stuff that was already there. We did it last week, so the new stuff will come back in. If you folks actually, if you want to leave your books here tonight, unless you want to just
Got
to
notes
give
in
it.
there I don't want you to see. No.
Oh, no, okay. No, if that's the case, or we can just leave fill-ins for you. Would you rather do that?
Fill-ins.
You gave.
Yeah.
So I'd like to have a few days to go over what we're going to discuss at a meeting.
Right, so I'll just give,
Like to keep it.
we'll just get you the fill-ins.
That's what we did. before.
And I'll make a list so right now I'm planning on putting another, 5 or 6 budgets on, for Monday night. The agenda, if you folks are okay with that.
Yes.
And then, we can, if you want to look at doing a workshop that week. I don't know if that's too much of 1 week for you, but I'm more than happy to do it. The budgets will be ready unless you want to do it the following week, but that just brings us into the second week of October, so.
We do have to start moving on it a little bit quicker, so.
So I will get, the rest of, I'll combine all of the other the smaller departments all into Monday night. I probably could have put a few more on tonight. I just didn't realize, I didn't know how quick it was gonna go, so. But I'll throw in some more and get rid of, like assessing the other department heads, the other, and code and taxes and elections and, administration, stuff like that.
Thank you. Good. Selectmen reports?
I'm all set, Mr. Chairman, tonight.
We have one, our next one, I think, is the 11th.
Met with the Conservation Commission last week. They're working on the Mike Burke Trail, putting over a new bridge up there. Their land management with Peter Farrell, they awarded him the contract up at Gilman Road, Gilman Pond. They will be going in there and looking at the forest. And next week, I believe, in which trees need to come down. Have not heard from the Budget Committee when their next meeting is, so can't give you any update there.
Thank you. The Master Plan Committee met on September 21st and covering further and finishing up on Chapter 6 infrastructure and getting ready to present the rough draft to the planning board on October 18th. The ZAC committee met on September 22nd on the zoning amendments, on the 6 zoning amendments, and the next meeting will be on October 4th, 2022, to review the zoning amendments draft. Town administrator.
All right, I only have 2 things for you this evening, gentlemen. First one is there's a couple of photographs that I put in the basement. And really all I'm trying to show you is there's a concentration of Ethernet wire that is years over years as far as that. And this is just the main trunk that is being snaked up through to the second floor here. So when I was meeting with the IT director, discussing Ethernet and how we're going to improve and try to weed out some of this other stuff, he proposed to me that the best solution for this problem, because we're getting to a point where we can't snake anymore. We're snaking this up an empty pipe, and we're not going to have any more room to run. So the problem is that everything that's up here on the second floor has a home run wire to the server room in the basement. And we have to do that for every connection right now. So the proposal is, if the board is in support of it, is to bring one fiber line. We can have a fiber line built for the run to go from the server room to the second floor to this panel. There's a panel, access panel on the stage back here. And the proposal would be to run the fiber to there with a permanent mounted switch, so that everything above the first floor can be run to that fiber connection instead of trying to run continuous home runs all the way to the basement to the server room. And then we would be able to weed out a lot of the years of wires that are still not, because we don't really know which individual one is in use right now. That would take quite a bit of time to sort all of that out now. So if we move along with that, the board's support, I can get definitive pricing. Right now, we're in the area approximately between all the hardware, the fiber line, and insulation and everything else is around $4,000. But we have to price every component individually, and I can get a better number on that. But when he proposed the idea to me, I wanted to bring it to the board to get a consensus on the board as to whether or not you want to pursue that.
Saying that I face the same problems in my store over 20 years of computer, and every time there's a new invention, and they think they ought to run wires. I wholeheartedly agree with this because I got wires there that I'm still tracing, and it's been a year. And especially old telephone lines, everything. So I have no problem with that, Ryan.
Any other questions or any comments?
Nah, it just looks like
It's a mess.
yeah,
And it needs to be cleaned up.
I have no problem with it.
Sounds like to me it should be
General
done.
consensus, good enough, or you want to vote on it?
No, well, if the board would have no objections to it, instead of trying to come back to another meeting, would you feel comfortable approving it with a cap of the $4,000? And then we'll use all of our vendor sources. Josh can put it out to his vendor sources, and they compete for the pricing on the products and stuff.
So, Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve the wiring of the computer to a main station up on the second floor with a cap of, I'm gonna go $4,500 just in case within the next 30 days is some software or something goes up on hardware, a cap of $4,500.
Second,
I second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And then the only other issue for discussion is, so earlier today, there was some discussion about a resident in town who was scheduled to do a burial, and the burial was prepaid for by the deceased back in 1999. And it was I believe it was a cremation burial. I do have a letter. So the issue is back in 1999, they were prepaying for cremation burials $50. Since then, obviously, over the last 20 something years, prices have increased. So it's now $350 to be able to do that. In this particular situation, the resident had a dated letter from the cemetery trustees in 1999. So this particular issue has now resolved itself, given that there's documentation and proof of payment at that point in time. But the reason we still want to bring it up for discussion is after having a discussion with the Parks and Rec director, the secretary is sort of looking for a consensus on guidance in the future now. So there's two things to really consider. One would be, we're still doing prepayments right now. And the prepayments have to be obviously at the current rate. But we could very well encounter many more situations like this, that something goes 10, 20 years out. Do we want to move forward with some sort of form letter from the cemetery department that covers the raise in costs? Or is it the board's wishes that we set the rate based on that current day's cost? And no matter what, we honor it 15 years out, 10 years out.
I myself personally, I think you should honor it out.
Okay.
Because people ask for that burial so they have funds to maintain. And that's why I brought it in. I said it at your desk with me. I talked to Ryan before and asked, instead of me amending the agenda, I just had him do it that way. I have no problem with the cost. It's hard for me to believe it costs $375 to dig that small of a hole for an urn. 350. What does it, can I ask what the cost is to dig it for a vault?
Honestly, I'd have to defer to the public works director. I don't have that number.
I think it's about the same price.
I think it's 5.
Myself personally looking at it, I don't see the cost of 350 or 375 for an urn. Especially if it's not going into a cemented box, if it's just going into one of their boxes going in, because I know in Farmington, it's only $100. Okay, and that was as of 3 years ago. They might have gone up since then. But I just can't believe, they came to me with this and I said, well, it's dated. It should be, we should honor anything that's there. And if we set today's date at 350, if they want to prepay now and they don't die for 20 years, we still should honor that. Because that was the reason, to me anyways, I don't know how the board feels, to me is they wanted to get this out of the way for their family. So the family shouldn't have to worry about 20 years, they're going to get hit with another 300 or 400. That's the chances we take, but that's hope when we have that money into the account, it's drawing interest on it. We're making money off their interest for the next 20 years too, even though we're not making a whole lot of interest these days. But I think every 5 years we should review it. I don't think we should review it every year. I think we should review the cost every 5 years. Unless we have a year like today, this year that we have, 10% inflation.
Right.
Especially on concrete products or manpower and stuff like that. Weekends, I'll agree with you. That should be more money than during the weekdays. Because we have the staff on during the weekdays, so it should not cost as much during the weekdays as it does on weekends. But that's how I feel, gentlemen. It's up to you guys to chat now.
The
But
questions
we're having an
are
agenda item on it one night.
general consensus.
Yeah, I think we should have an agenda item. Well, if they prepay, that's, I don't know, it's kind of hard because 20 years down the road, the costs go up, in this issue. And I believe we should have made, do what we did do. We stood behind, which, come on, that's a contract, that's what they thought.
This is a
The issue is
documentation.
we
that's-
could change it. I don't know if we should. I'd have to think about it.
Future.
For the future, a different scenario. You can prepay, but 20 years down the road, you have to match the going rate.
But isn't our opening costs and closing costs only for opening the grave and closing the grave? We don't order the vault, I don't believe. So it's really just opening the grave and closing the grave. Monday through Friday, we're already paying them to be there. Okay?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I'd have to sit down and look at the whole cemetery policy and see where it stands at.
I think this issue here was, I saw the same receipt. And I understand as far as honoring what the intent was, I believe, when that receipt was made in 1999. I did not choose to make that decision that given day. I posed it back to the sexton to go back to the family and say, just so you know, there has been increases, and see if the family would be inclined to pay the difference. And they chose to see Selectman Wentworth about that. And they were able to proffer that receipt in that situation there. The issue is that right now you raise and understand that you raise all the wages for all of your staff. And those are all done through taxation. That is not done through the cemetery as far as the perpetual care fund. So we don't pay our staff through a revolving fund. So when you estimate these costs out for interment of folks, whether it be through cremation and or a full burial, you have to look at the complete wages and benefits for that employee to in fact do that internment in order to offset your cost. Okay. So, and that's because somebody chooses to be buried, at the cemetery here. So you could in fact change your method and say that the perpetual care fund is going to pay for the entire operation. And then I would agree with Selectman Wentworth that, we're paying our people to be there anyways. But every taxpayer is paying for your
cemetery to be staffed and manned, even if they choose not to be buried here or not to receive any cemetery services. So the reason why we also look at the market as to what is happening. Now, granted, we don't look at the market, what's happening in Manchester, how, that's quite a difference, in costs there, because they have a other overhead that they have to manage. So I think, honestly, and looking at everything coming into it, the costs, which are right now that you have in place, I think are very current and very realistic costs that are there. When you think about, you're going to end up having an employee, dig a cremation. First of all, they have to locate it, properly locate it, position it, dig it. And then they have to go through any kind of whatever may happen there with a funeral home relative to any kind of a burial service. So they have to be on site and be present for that. And then they end up having to do the exchange of an interment as far as putting the actual ashes in, making sure it's closed up and everything's done. So procedurally, the time that is taken is not, what we might think of. I mean, it wouldn't take very long for us to actually do that. But when you take it, the whole picture there, it actually, adds up. And I think that it's a fair rate that's actually out there. I can certainly get you some comparisons. The New Hampshire Cemetery Association has a actual breakdown from every cemetery, that actually is a member that is willing to contribute that information. So that's the reason why those costs and rates are in there. And when I talked with the town administrator about it earlier, I said, I think that our receipt needs to be a little bit more clarified as to whether or not it's understood that, you pay the prepayment now and understand that that is your payment and it is final payment for the services of internment. That will help in the future for any other sexton that may be up there that has to be met with the same situation 20 years later. Or have language in there that says that if there's been any increase in, overhead or any increase in fees, that the difference in those fees, would be assessed to the family. That's the decision of you as trustees. It makes no difference to me. I just have to advocate for trying to cover our wages and benefits of our staff and trying to offset that as much.
Right now, the taxpayers on the tax bill pays for the wages of cemetery, correct?
Correct.
We really don't take anything out of the perpetual care fund to really do anything.
Not until you see this year's budget.
Because even the mowers didn't come out. I think the taxpayers paid for the mowers, correct? We didn't take that out.
They did not. They paid that came from the perpetual care.
Okay.
So you'll see in this year's budget, when we get to the budget process there, that a little over 50% of the budget that I'm presenting to you this year will have at least that amount. And we could look at further amounts to come from the perpetual care fund, which is, you're fortunate, it's in a healthy position.
Finally.
Yeah.
It wasn't for a while.
It appears right now that it is, but how it would maintain, we'd have to do some projections whether or not it could maintain that based upon what we get for interest. That's the only difficult part, because you can only utilize the interest in some of those accounts as well, because it's a split situation with your perpetual care funds. So I just wanted to
thank you. Appreciate
that information there. I appreciate the sharing of the information.
Thank you.
So is it the wish of the board to bring this up under an agenda item moving forward? It doesn't have to be next week, but
I would say the first of the year, beginning of the year.
Oh,
before we get into the spring season.
Okay. Yep.
All right.
That'll give us time to hash out if we want to make policy changes or something down there.
Sure. Okay. One last thing.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. One last thing under TA was just to bring up is it's the board's wish to take a vote on the information. And we didn't talk about after the public hearing, we didn't talk about the board's feeling on whether they want to move forward with utilizing the CRF funds to, solicit quotes on consultants and architects on the buildings or facilities. Is that something you folks feel comfortable voting on?
Well, we put it out there. It was out there for what, a week's notice? How many days notice was it out there for the public hearing?
I think that one was 15 days. 10 days.
10 days?
10 days.
Mr. Chairman, I have no problem making a motion to the fact to have the town administrator go out and advertise for consultants in the beginning with the facilities committee of the fire department and highway department.
Second?
Get quotes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Public input?
Like go back to the chair?
Yes. Yes.
Well, I'm still Dr. Bill Woodfin at Dan Kelly Drive. But I will tell you, observing your,
Could you state your name again?
oh,
please?
I'm sorry, yes, Dr. William Woodfin. I live at 4 Dan Kelly Drive, town of Alton. As I shared with you gentlemen, I was a selectman for 20 years in the town of Marblehead, Massachusetts. And I can really appreciate the service that you gentlemen all give to the town. And it's readily evident that you care about carrying out your responsibilities in an appropriate manner. We just moved to Alton, and the reason why we moved to Alton is because it was a wonderful small town with a history, and we're really learning right now what the history is and things like that. But it's encouraging to see the board support something like that historical marker or the Gilman Museum, because those are some of the things that make Alton Bay or Alton special. And I would encourage you to keep doing the work you're doing, because it seems like you do have a great handle on budgets and everything else. So that's my observation.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
This is just kind of a general statement. On the 30th, we're losing another man from the highway department, Matt Triano. Only because I was the highway manager for so many years and Matt worked for me. I just basically want to publicly say thank you for all the dedication of service that he's done for us. He was the leader of the road reconstruction outfit that we've run for so many years, and he'd be deeply missed. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you
sure
very
that'd be
much.
much appreciated, your comments.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just wanted to thank you guys for your support on a number of items tonight, the water bandstand marker, the Parks and Rec Committee. I had a question about the Gilman Museum budget. So when it's like $8,087. And I know we just are going to be moving forward with the sign. So is that for next year? Does that include that signage payment out of that?
No, that's actually being funded. There's a
That's
trust.
That's the trust.
There's a trust
Okay,
with
that's what I
money.
thought, but I came up because I just wanted to make sure that I was correct in my thinking.
Yes.
So I just figured I would just clarify that. So, and I want to say that I agree with Selectman Wentworth about the avatar thing online is just horrid compared to what we had before. It is so complicated to use. And I just wanted to thank you guys for listening to the people tonight and doing your due diligence and thinking about things further and not just jumping save for streets or anything else. So just thank you. And of course, I always appreciate you guys and your service and being here. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public input? Seeing none, I'll close to.
Mr. Chairman, I think we skipped over the consent agenda.
Just a little bit.
That's,
I was just gonna go into that.
we jumped ahead of it, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. I just didn't want to go into non-public
Okay,
before.
no, I was just gonna start consent agenda because it was in mine, public session was before consent agenda. Was I incorrect on that? That's what it says on my sheet.
Approval of the minutes.
Yeah, you do, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did skip over approval of minutes.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I move we approve the public session minutes, September 12th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Chair, make a motion to approve the consent agenda, though with discussion. As soon as you get a second, though. So the only discussion I have, and I went up and asked town administrator, because the first time in my 17 years of being here, I've never seen this letter in the back on two of the properties. And I'm just gonna read it generically.
Sure.
I'm not gonna,
I already, he knows where we're going.
but it's like I said, it's first time in 17 years, so Andrew being here, in case Bob hasn't seen it or you haven't
I
seen
haven't
it.
seen
Okay. Property located at blank blank as map blank lot blank, owned by taxpayer, is due to be deeded to the town of Alton for non-payment of 2019 taxes. The Town of Alton hereby notifies tax collector, town clerk, that they will not accept the tax collector's deed because in its judgment, acceptance and ownership, of the real estate would subject the municipality to an undesirable obligations or liability risk per RSA 80:38, paragraph 2A. So my question was to Ryan, if we vote on this agenda as the consent agenda, as presented to us tonight, are we agreeing with this letter?
Oh, no.
Okay, and the only reason I'm asked that was because myself in 17 years, I've never seen that. This is the first time. And that with some of them might say, well, we approve this? Are we saying we don't want that property, even though we have statute obligation to review and go through it? So that's what my discussion was, and Ryan had an answer for me.
Yeah, so basically, like Ruben had said, when we discussed this, so when Jen set the paperwork up, she included that form in case the board, so if you approve the consent agenda, you're approving the tax deeding as presented.
as presented.
These waiver forms, deed waiver forms, is if the board for some reason decides they do not want a deed at this point, this waiver sign needs to be signed by the board members and dated and returned back to the tax collector. And this is her formal RSA responsibility as far as not taking that action because the board is the one that has to make that decision. So, but that's a good question because it was all in the packet. So, so if the consent agenda is approved as presented, you will be moving forward with the
We'll
tax.
go
deed.
move forward. Okay. So we had a motion, we had a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Again, I apologize for skipping over the approval of the minutes. I went right over that. Sorry
That's
about
quite all
that.
right, sir.
I apologize for that.
All right, you've done a wonderful job tonight.
Yeah, it was kind of dropped in my lap tonight.
Sure.
Requests,
No request for appointments, right?
again, we've already done public input because I skipped over the other one. And we'll go right into non-pub.
Gonna make a motion to go in non-public session under
RSA 91,
91
RSA 91.
dash
A3.
Oh, you got it right in front of you. I didn't know if you had it in front of you. That's why I was doing it.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, go
I
ahead.
make a motion to enter into non-public meeting per RSA 91 dash A:3 2.